Hi, it's Neil here, and I'm in Seattle at my family's house. We come here to celebrate Pesach every year, but I promised those of you back in Kansas that I would post a little something talking about what is Chametz and what isn't. What can you eat during Pesach, Passover, and what should you not eat if you want to keep Passover? So every year I get these questions. Well, what's okay? What's not okay? The basic thing is chametz is what we call something you don't eat during Passover. Chametz, it's generally translated as meaning something that is leavened. So the obvious meaning of something leavened of chametz, bread is chametz, cereal is chametz, pasta is chametz. Most cookies, unless it's Passover cookies, that's chametz. It's not kosher for Passover. But it gets a little bit more complicated and people have lots of questions, especially when it comes to things like peanuts, hummus, garbanzo beans, corn, rice. Every year people have questions about these things that are called kitniot. And is it okay? Because some people freak out. No, you can't have peanuts. And other people are like, what are you talking about? Peanuts. Of course you can have peanuts. So I'm going to answer some of these questions and explain a little bit about chametz. So let's start with the basics of chametz. What can you not eat during Passover? The rabbis in the Mishnah talk about 5 grains. And these 5 grains you can use to make matzah. Here we have barley. Here we have oats, rye, spelt, and wheat. You can make matzah from any of these. Theoretically, you could have barley or oat matzah. I don't know, it sounds pretty good to me, but I don't know of anyone who's ever made it. So the rabbis talk about these 5 grains that you can use to make matzah. And the basic idea is if you have something made from these 5 grains that isn't matzah, it's chametz, and it's not kosher for Passover. That's the basic idea. It's as simple as that. You'd think that would be the end of the story, but of course it's not, because in Judaism, everything is complicated. So what about these things that we're not sure of what the status is? Here we have chickpeas or garbanzo beans and peanuts, and then we have some corn and some rice. Why are these considered to be chametz by some people, but not by others? Generally, the division falls along Ashkenazi and Sephardi lines. Eastern European, on the one hand, Ashkenazi Jews, have tended not to eat these things during Passover, whereas Sephardic Jews of Spanish, Mediterranean descent have not had any issue with eating these. I want to say, as far as whether you're Ashkenazi or Sephardic determining what's chametz and what's not, I would say it is not your ethnic background that determines whether or not something is chametz. It's not as if you're digesting it differently that's making it chametz. It's simply that those are the areas where the customs emerged, and that's really what this is. It's all about custom. So what is the custom? These things are called kitniot. Kitniot, same word, same root as katan, small. So kitniot basically are small things. Obviously, these are small things. What's wrong with kitniot during Passover? Well, it's a little bit complicated, but let me lay it out. There are a number of reasons why people may have prohibited them, mostly as a fence around the law. These small things, they're stored in the same way as these grains. They're cooked in the same way as these grains. If they're stored next to each other, it's very easy for some of one to get mixed in with the other. You could end up accidentally eating chametz during Passover. You don't want that to happen. These are some of the reasons why people may have prohibited them. But what's interesting is, as much as there's discussion about the prohibition against kitniot, we can't find any actual evidence of the prohibition itself. There's lots of discussion about reasons for the prohibition, why people may have prohibited it, but we don't actually see any evidence of the actual prohibition. It's kind of bizarre. In fact, there's a lot of discussion among various authorities saying why one should not observe the prohibition. Some years the prohibition has really gotten out of hand in some places. Some at times even prohibiting radishes, sunflower seeds, and in one place they even tried to prohibit potatoes during Passover. It's like, seriously, potatoes? Dude, what am I going to eat? So that did not stick. But this stuff has stuck with a lot of people. The conservative movement has looked at this and the basis of the prohibition said, you know what? It's a mistaken custom. It's not legitimate. And the conservative movement has permitted the eating of kitniot during Passover. So corn, rice, peanuts, beans, okay, according to the conservative movement. I've taken a little bit of a different approach, and I've gone back and I've looked at what did the rabbis of the Mishnah actually ask when they're discussing what makes something chametz or not. because they didn't just stop by discussing the 5 grains. They continue and talk about, well, what about vetch, whatever that is, or cow's wheat? Are these things that are also chametz during Passover? And they discuss it in such a way that there are some defining characteristics of something that make it chametz or not chametz. So essentially it comes down to this. Is it a true grain? Can you grind it into a true flour and bake it into a risen bread? And most importantly, if you mix it with water or moisture, is its natural tendency to ferment or to spoil? And the word for ferment is machmitz. So does it become chametz? Well, with the grains, absolutely it does. And as much as I would love to eat corn and rice during Passover, when I look at it, I have to admit, well, rice, corn, these are true grains. If you bake them, if you grind them, you can grind them into a true flour, bake them into a risen bread, and their natural tendency is to ferment rather than to spoil. Fermented rice, that's where we get sake. Fermented corn, that's where we get, well, most moonshine, but also bourbon. On the other hand, if you grind up peanuts or chickpeas, you may get something that looks like flour. But if you mix it with water and bake it, you're not going to get anything other than like a little bean biscuit or something like that. It doesn't act like a true grain flour. And it seems to be that if you mix it with water, its tendency is to spoil as opposed to ferment. The rabbis in the Talmud actually conducted some experiments to determine that. And like so much stuff, the results were inconclusive. I'm actually in the process of setting up some experiments with my friend Daniel Tabak to determine whether or not these things spoil or ferment. But in the meantime, my practice is that I will eat some kitniot, but not others. Corn, rice, sorry, those are grains. They seem to be chametz. Peanuts, chickpeas, no problem as far as I'm concerned. So my halachic determination, going back to the standards that were being used by the rabbis of the Talmud and of the Mishnah, is I will eat legumes, peanuts, chickpeas, no problem. Corn, rice, nope, I'm not going to eat it during Passover. And that is what I have to say on the matter. So, Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach to everyone in Kansas or wherever you are watching this video.